Hello, my name is Elisa Rodriguez, and this is Arianism Today. Today I would like to talk about David and Saul and kind of the position which Arianism is right now, and Arians and people who believe as I do, and what position we are in. And I feel like this is kind of going to explain some things to you and explain some things to people who may not know a little bit about Arianism. So what I'm understanding is that there's a correlation, a story that's being told in the Bible about David and Saul. That's something that is happening to us as Arians as well, and something that we need to keep in mind and keep identifying with, is that Saul was the anointed, chosen person to be king of Israel. But there came a time where Saul decided to disobey and make some very big mistakes, and God decided to strip the kingdom from him and appoint another. David was chosen as the appointment, as a replacement for Saul. And so what I'm gathering from that, and what I feel like is happening to us as Arians, and what we need to see, because a lot of people think, well, if your Arianism is the real truth, why is so many people not Arian, and why is it so small, and why is it this and that, and which is a great argument, but the problem is, or the thing that's happening in my opinion, is that it's just like David. David was anointed king to replace Saul, who was out of God's will and has been rejected. But Saul was still king after David was anointed king. The change had not happened yet. And the same thing has happened here. When the church first started, all of the church up to Nicaea, they all believed Arianism. They all believed that Jesus and the Father were not one, that they were separate beings. And when the Council of Nicaea happened, somebody tried to introduce and force down to the church a skewed view of who God is and who Jesus is and who the Holy Spirit is together. They tried to force a lie and deception into the church. And so because of that has made them become the church who, and obviously 60 years after Nicaea, the Arians took over, removed all of those crazy people who were trying to be Trinitarians, and took over the church for another 60 years until somebody who was friends with another emperor decided to just wipe the church clean of anyone who didn't want to stand for the truth, or stood for the truth, and wasn't willing to adjust their view. They were excommunicated or killed. So because of that, they had chosen to reject the truth. And so it's kind of like Saul. The Catholic Church now is like Saul. And it shows that they were once in the right when they did this mistake at Nicaea. They are rejected by God now. And they still are operating, though, in the position that they had when they first started. And obviously the Arians owned the church from the beginning of the church up to Nicaea, and 60 years after. The only two denominations, if we want to call them that, the only two faiths or denominations that have had the whole church under one or the other faiths is only Arianism and Catholicism. No other faith has had the entire church of the whole world under their direction. Just Arianism and Catholicism. Everything else subsequent to that has broken off of or been a piece of, but the only two faiths that have had everyone under them as a whole church is Arianism and Catholicism. That cannot be denied. We already know by the fruits of Catholicism and all of the idolatry that that's not the truth. So that begs the question whether or not Arianism in your mind should be considered the truth, because God would have the whole church under the truth for at least a certain amount of time. And the only two options you have is Arianism or Catholicism. So right now, Arianism, since that time of Nicaea and when the Arians were kicked out of the church, is kind of like when David was being pursued and being kicked out of the house of the king and being pursued as a criminal, and they were trying to kill him. And they obviously, the Catholic Church operated the same way, trying to kill Arians, trying to kill anyone who didn't agree with what their doctrine was. Have historically drank the blood of the saints for a long time. But if you look at the Catholic Church as though they were like Saul, and picture the Catholic Church as Saul, and you look at the Arian Church and Christians who are Arian and who believe this way, the way they've been treated by the church, like some of the famous people that have been Arians, they're all rejected and all dejected or killed or burned at the stake or whatnot. And so we need to see the role that the Catholic Church is in. They are Saul. They are rejected. Their time will come. We don't need to worry about them. What we need to do is do what David did during that time. He obviously had friends that were related to Saul, but he obviously went on his own and went on the byways and, side roads and did this kind of stuff and amassed an army and waited for God to give him the kingdom, to hand him the kingdom. And that's what we need to do as Arians, is continue teaching, continue preaching, and understanding why the Catholic Church, and when I say Catholic Church, is any church that believes in the doctrine of the Trinity, is the Catholic Church. Whether they are friends with each other or not, that's beside the point. They're all Catholic. I believe what defines a Catholic is the doctrine of the Trinity. If you have the Trinity, you're Catholic. If not, then I don't know what you are. Besides Arian, if you believe the way I believe. So this is something that I'm trying to project to everyone who understands Arianism and who's going through this kind of, why is there no other place? Why is there not so many, and all of this and that? And just wait. Be patient, but keep pushing. Don't deny who you are. Just keep pushing. It's obvious that we're going to go through hard times like David did during this time. And so there's battles we're going to have to fight. And so I encourage you to just read about David and his struggles with Saul and, all of that. And just kind of understand what typology you can gather from that about who we are as Arians and who the Catholic Church is, and the majority of the church is, as Saul, and how they're treating us and how we're supposed to respond. It's just something that we're going to have to grow into. And just remember that. And just take solace in understanding what's happening and being able to see the bigger picture of what's happening. So we know that in the last days, the Antichrist is going to attack the church. And there's going to be 2 prophets that get killed. And they're going to rise again and go up to heaven in front of everyone else. You have to think that the Antichrist is going to, the beast and the Antichrist is just going to make war with the saints. And that means that we're going to be in that place of David where persecution is going to abound. Jesus went through this when the Sanhedrin was attacking him, even though he was the high priest and he is the one to sit on the throne of David. Even though all of these truths are there, it's not unheard of for those who are supposed to be in a certain place to be treated as though they were not, and to be dejected and to be attacked and killed. And so Arianism, or Christianity, true love of the truth of God and his Son, is going to come with some persecution. And the enemy has deceived millions into believing that things that are not biblical. And we have to stand for the truth regardless of whatever comes from what happens. Even death. That's something that we must understand. That persecution, martyrdom, all of those things, they're possible. It may be a part of our life at some point. And we push even harder. That's not something to be afraid of. That's something to be happy about if it ever happens. But really we want to just preach the truth to the world, and regardless of whatever comes our way. So why, to answer the question, why is the church so not Arian, if it's so true, is because in due time God is going to reveal the truth. And so we just keep on preaching and teaching and moving forward, and regardless of how all of these naysayers, snicker or do whatever, we are going to build. Just like Nehemiah. We're not going to let anyone stop us from rebuilding what is the truth, and rebuilding the church, and rebuilding the doctrine of the church, and rebuilding all of these things. And so we're actually working on trying to get officially a formed church and name and that kind of stuff, organization to ordain others in this belief system, which is not going to be called Arianism. And we're going to move forward. And it's just something that we ask for you guys to pray about.